everyone, I'm Captain Logan.
I'm Dan?
And today, yes, you are Dan. Were you confused? Were you uncertain?
Yeah, I wasn't sure at first.
Okay, well, you are Dan. You don't have to put a question mark on it anymore. And today, Dan and I are going to talk about the Age of Ultron trailer. I was going to do this as a captain's log, but Dan and I were going to be talking tonight anyway, and we thought it might be more fun to do this as a part trailer discussion and a part speculative video. Dan and I did a speculation video back before Amazing Spider-Man 2 came out for that, and I've done this with Manos on the Ben Affleck as Batman thing, and this seemed like a thing that there was enough to discuss that it might be worth hashing out as a whole kind of speculative conversation. So, Dan, thanks for joining me for this. The trailer looked awesome. I'm really excited to kind of talk about it a little bit.
Yeah, I'm really excited too. Thanks for having me as always. And I can't wait to kind of start talking about this because it's a really good teaser trailer in that it doesn't give a whole lot away about the specifics of the story, but I think we get a lot in terms of the tone and a little bit of a flavor of some of the things we'll see. And there's a lot of like small references in there to things that if you're not a gigantic Marvel geek, you wouldn't catch right away, I don't think.
I want to start out talking about the circumstances regarding or surrounding the release of the trailer before we get into the trailer proper,
Oh, sure.
because we live in a really interesting and sometimes weird day and age now where trailers are sometimes feel like almost as big of an event as movies themselves. And it gets weird because you'll see like Twitter, like on Twitter, things are trending. You'll see all these different news sites and stuff making a big deal out of next week we get the Age of Ultron trailer, and I'm like, it wasn't like this when I was a kid. Nobody got excited about the day a trailer was going to come out. And I think it's like that because of the internet, right? I mean, it's like that because these things get released online, and also because this internet culture has gotten us to a place now where a lot of people want to know everything they can know before a movie comes out. And while I get excited and I like to speculate, of course, as I always said, I sometimes resist that. There's a part of me that kind of wants to, let my excitement just be fueled about the knowledge of the project and know nothing till I go in, and that's getting harder and harder. What was really weird about this one is that we thought it was going to come next week, and here I am already planning stuff, going, okay, I got to make sure that I don't have too much going on this particular day so that I can talk about that trailer. And then it gets leaked. And again, these are the sorts of things that we didn't have to worry about before internet culture, like leaked trailers and what does a studio do about them. I thought the way Marvel handled it was really classy.
I agree. I thought it was really classy and it was really funny too. You know, just blaming Hydra for the leak and then releasing it officially was really cool of them.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what I thought was classy about it. I love that Marvel Studios understands their brand and that they play around with that and that they're not sticking the muds about it. You know, like you get the sense that going all the way up to the top, these guys making these choices love this universe and like playing in it, and they do those sorts of fun meta things. When they said, "Oh man, it's a Hydra conspiracy," I was like, "Right on! That's totally how I would have played."
Yeah.
That's really cool of them. You know, let's spin it. Let's have fun with it. Let's make a joke out of it. And paid off. Yes. At last count, 18 million views in less than 24 hours.
Oh man, I hadn't even looked at the view count, just because I was so mesmerized by what was happening on the screen. But that's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely insane. No doubt that this movie is going to do at least as well as the last one, if not better.
I think it's going to do better.
And that's crazy because it broke a lot of records. But it's really exciting, and it's gonna do super well for lots of reasons. Obviously, the like the brand loyalty and people trusting it has continued on past the Avengers. All the movies have done pretty well. Most of them people have really loved, and even the ones that a lot of people didn't like, that were a little bit more polarizing, did well and were not as polarizing as some other superhero films that have come out in the last couple of years that you and I could name, right? So you'll
Yes.
get like okay, there's lots of people that don't like Iron Man 3, but I wouldn't say that that's like a half and half polarizing movie like Man of Steel was.
Or Amazing Spider-Man 2.
or Amazing Spider-Man 2, which was less polarizing than it was even almost like just panned straight up.
Yeah, exactly. It's yeah, I think it's really cool that Marvel understands what their fan base is all about. Where they're going to be coming at this, because like I think Marvel's reaction would have been very different if this had been leaked like much earlier than when it was supposed to air for Shield to try to get a ratings booster for that. And that kind of stinks for them. I feel like that they were probably a little bit upset about that because not that Shield is like struggling um, to stay on the air to my knowledge, but like they
Well,
probably could have used that ratings booster like the first time release of the Age of Ultron trailer during Shield.
I wish we knew more about how the studio heads are looking at Agents of Shield right now, because I think it might be struggling. Like I think they might be considering doing something different with it next season, either putting it on Netflix with the other Netflix shows or canning it completely, and nobody knows about it yet. Because when you compare the ratings to like Arrow and Flash, it's doing on par with those, but it has had dwindling numbers every week since the beginning of the season.
And it's on a bigger network than those two shows,
It's
importantly,
on a
too.
much it's on a bigger network, and like studios look at the big percentage drop off. They wanted to see something closer to that 12 million they had the first week continue. Now, they couldn't have expected that to necessarily sustain itself. On the other hand, the Avengers movies, the Marvel Studios films are so popular that if people had gotten something that they felt like expanded that universe more every week, maybe they could have gotten those numbers.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see how everything Marvel plays into this movie because we'll talk about it a little bit more when we get into the trailer specifically. But I think, and I have a feeling that the Peggy Carter show in the founding of Hydra and stuff might have some sort of a role to play in what happens in this movie. I'm going to keep a very close eye on that show when it comes out to see how
Yeah.
it informs of the things that happen in here.
I hope so, because they need to let the TV stuff matter more.
Yes, agreed.
We've had a couple things that were great, and of course I'm always saying the Winter Soldier stuff was awesome, and I thought that they really jumped off of that and played with the Hydra stuff really well. The Sith episode was absolutely outstanding, and is maybe technically one of, if not the best shows they've done.
I agree. I mean, I was on Shield discussions when that happened, and that was kind of early in the show's run. That was before I had to go to school and stuff, and I remember
Yeah.
really liking that. That was good stuff. I mean, it was those two things specifically are the right way to do that kind of stuff, and the wrong way to do it is to have the Shield team clean up garbage after Thor: The Dark World fights. You know?
Exactly. Yeah, and then importantly have an artifact randomly happen to have to do with Asgard, but not be found in anything that remotely relates to the film. It's just,
Yes.
well, we just did the dark world, so we're going to conveniently find this artifact that has to do with Asgard. Really? All right. Like, it wasn't dropped by anyone in that movie or anything. I don't think Agents of Shield has gotten enough credit for doing cool stuff like bringing in Stillwell and then setting up his being a Hydra mole, and then us finding out about that in Winter Soldier. When I went to Winter Soldier, I felt like I was having an even better experience than I would have had I not watched Shield, and I kept looking around thinking, I bet a bunch of people in this room haven't been watching Shield, and they're not going to appreciate it as much.
Yeah, that's true.
And so
That.
there's been some of that, and
Mhm.
I kind of hope that kind of thing continues. And so I felt really bad for Agents of Shield that this got leaked early. I think the way Marvel handled it was the way to handle it, but I also think it really sucks for that show because they need that boost, and like I don't know. I'm so weird. I'm so weirded out by the season. I'm really back and forth on stuff. And when I say back and forth, it's because I keep thinking that every other episode is really good, and then the ones in between are kind of throwaway and just okay. So like I don't know. In some ways, I'm sort of like I don't know if the show really deserves the boost, but at the same time, I like it enough, and it was so great at the end of last season that I really want it to stay on the air and to pick up momentum. So I don't know. It sucks that this couldn't have helped it.
Yeah, and you can't help but somewhat enjoy a show where Clark Gregg is the main principal actor because he's just so charismatic and awesome. Um, And you want that show to succeed because in concept I really like the show. But anyway, I think potentially maybe now that this trailer got leaked, maybe we could get another trailer for a future Shield episode, like the full trailer that isn't a teaser attached to an episode to get a boost. I mean, they can always do that kind of thing too. There's some kind of strategy that they could use to recover from that, I suppose.
Especially because we can be, I think, almost 100% sure that whatever happens toward the end of the season is going to have everything to do with Age of Ultron.
Oh
So
yes.
I think it would be really smart of them to do some kind of a trailer like they did with Winter Soldier that mixes footage from both things.
I wouldn't be surprised because I saw an interview with Robert Downey Jr. recently, and I don't know if they're the corporate environment is in place to make this happen. But Robert Downey Jr. said in an interview that he really wants to appear on Agents of Shield. So if you're going to tie into Age of Ultron, that would be a perfect way to do that in an episode, to have Tony Stark featured in some sort of way in your plot or something like that.
All you have to do is put him in 5 minutes of one episode, and everyone will give it another chance.
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, Samuel L. Jackson was a draw for us comic book fans, and don't get me wrong, Samuel L. Jackson is a great actor. I love him. He's one of my favorite actors working today. But Robert Downey Jr. is so much more well known by people because of the Iron Man movies.
That and it's a coup because he commands like $40 million a movie,
Yes, yes.
and Sam Jackson's not that hard to get.
Right.
Yes, he's a big A-list actor, but Sam Jackson loves to work and he'll do about anything.
Right.
And so it wasn't as surprising that now it was surprising when he showed up at the end of the second episode, sure, but like that they were able to get him in and give him an episode toward the end of last season. I think that was expected. I think it would have been like wrong of them to have not done that at some point and pitching that show. Like I think when they said, okay, we're going to do Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., one of the first questions that must have come up was, okay, we can't do this show unless Nick Fury shows up at least every now and again.
Oh, of course, because Nick Fury is the S.H.I.E.L.D. agent.
He's the director. You have to have that. But with regards to Robert Downey, I did not know about that interview, and that is really exciting. I think it's really cool to hear him say he wants to do that, and that tells you, of course, we knew this already, but it's more confirmation that he cares about this continuity. He likes it. He's really happy to be part of it, and it's not just. I mean, yeah, he's super rich, but it's not just about making all that money.
No, of course not, because he's not going to get a big paycheck for being in, whatever screen time he gets in a TV show.
No, but I mean, I'm sure he'll get more than anybody else has ever gotten to be on that show.
Yes, of course.
but I mean, like, him saying I want to do it is really refreshing, because that was one of those things where I was like, I'm sure they want that at some point, but I don't know if they could get him to do it. And it's really cool to hear him just come right out and say, so at what point do I get to be on that show?
Yeah, and I think him and Clark Gregg are probably friends, at least to some degree, from working on all of those movies together. And that's probably, I think he said that something like that to the effect in the interview, that Clark Gregg was the reason why he wanted to come on the show and do it, because he's, such good friends with him. So
Yeah,
I wouldn't be
awesome.
surprised. I would be really excited to see that. I haven't gotten caught up on S.H.I.E.L.D. yet from the end of last season, and I really need to do that because I feel like a Marvel fan that's not paying his dues, I guess. And I've heard that the end of last season is really good, and I'd like to catch up on it because I was enjoying it at least to some degree. But
I didn't realize you hadn't even seen the end of last season. I'm glad I haven't said anything that ruined anything for you yet.
I've watched S.H.I.E.L.D. discussion, so I know. But
Okay, yeah. I don't recommend that. I don't really recommend anybody watching Shield discussion. I had a comment a couple weeks ago. If you'll indulge me for a minute, I had a comment from a couple weeks ago where somebody was like, "Is it bad that I watch Shield discussions and I've never seen an episode of Agents of Shield?" And I was like, "I guess that's neat of you, thanks, but why? Like watch the show." Anyway, so let's go ahead and get into the trailer itself,
sure.
and we'll do a kind of a little bit of review, tell you what we thought of what we saw, and do a little bit of spitballing. So the first thing, I'm going to say something really silly right out the gate.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm with everybody that like the strings line is really cool and is going to be the new Why So Serious and all of that, and it's going to be hard not to say things that everybody said already. I mean, I feel like the trailer's been out for 2 weeks already. Like, I'm like, what can I say that hasn't been said already? And it just came out yesterday. But the thing that got me the most excited, Dan,
Yes.
Out of everything we saw in the trailer, like even over Hulkbuster armor, over Captain America walking around a castle, over all the things that I thought were really cool, Ultron has a moving mouth.
That is really cool.
It's really cool.
It's great that they're allowing James Spader to give a physical performance with motion capture. Because that's
Yeah.
one of the things that Whedon mentioned when he talked about Ultron. He was like, "Yeah, we didn't hire James Spader just to do a voice. We hired him to give a physical performance well, and you'll see that once you go see the movie. And I get what they're doing with it now. Ultron, I get the feeling that Spader like played the damaged Ultron like Iron Man armor suit prototype thing. I don't know what to call that. That
Yeah.
we see towards the beginning of the trailer, and then we see the Ultron in his what I expect to be his sort of final form at the end. Um, that's really really cool. And there's precedence for them doing that kind of thing because the Hulk worked out so well and they had Andy Serkis working with them. And it's interesting that they have Andy Serkis not a CGI character in the trailer. They show his face in here, and I've never seen him be a like real physical character on screen before.
Yeah. Good call. I I think that having now seen the trailer and seen all of the like mini Ultron copies and stuff like that, and like the destroyed city and all that kind of stuff. You see the giant stakes and everything. I think the title is really interesting
Mm-hmm.
moving forward, because one of the first things I thought of, and I have a tendency to really dissect titles and try to figure out what like what they can tell us about a piece even before we've seen it. Uh, Age of Ultron implies a period of time. You have the Golden Age, the Silver Age. It's not like when we had Age of Apocalypse. And by the way, I think that you would not have this title if it weren't for Age of Apocalypse. I think that when you and I think if you didn't have this title, that's what the next X-Men movie would have been called.
Yeah,
But
agreed.
when you have when you had Age of Apocalypse, it wasn't like a 4-issue miniseries. That was a long period of time of a thing that was going on in comics, right? How do
Yes.
you do a 2-hour, 2.5 hour movie called Age of something? And it makes me wonder how much time is going to pass in this movie, because the sense I'm getting from it, I mean, like there's a lot of weightiness with this trailer. There's a lot of gravitas, and and it just looks like an epic. And the feeling I get from it is that there is every possibility that we're going to have a status quo inside this movie toward the middle, where Ultron has completely taken over.
That would be interesting.
And I hope they go there, or if not completely, kind of close. Like I'm hoping that there's almost a no man's land scenario.
I would be very interested to see where they go with that too, because
I don't think the title makes sense if it's just we have one big giant fight with this guy and then we're done.
well, I think it could make sense, and the way that I was sort of thinking about it was the Age of Ultron begins with this movie. Ultron changes the world in a fundamental way, and the age, as defined by the creation of Ultron, continues after this movie.
You're right. That's the other way it could go, isn't it? Yes, I didn't think of that. That makes perfect sense.
So, like, I think the interesting thing when Ultron's talking about like Ultron's whole thing in the comics, for those who don't know, and people watching this video probably already do know, but for the sake of what I'm trying to say, I'll repeat it, I suppose. Ultron's whole motivation in the comics is humanity is inherently flawed, and he believes that they need to be eliminated to save the Earth. And that's his whole thing in the trailer. He says that you want to protect the planet, but you don't want it to change, and he views humans as the problem, and they're too close to the problem to see it for what it is, and that's why he says they're all attached to strings. That's the whole thing that he's going for. So
Yeah.
maybe he makes everyone realize that you know the Avengers and humanity can't solve all of its problems or something like that, and that's the dark sort of Empire Strikes Back ending of the movie.
Yeah, and that like they defeat him, but they start to take a little bit of stock into what he's saying, and that would lead us into the whole Captain America 3 thing of that allegedly it's gonna start civil war because Iron Man thinks that because he created Ultron, there needs to be more oversight with people like him and not allowing people to go too far with stuff that they can't control.
Exactly. Yes.
And I still wish I didn't know all that.
Yeah, me too.
I still wish I could see all that unfold because I can kind of I feel like I see the skeleton now. I see where it's all going, and the coolest thing about Winter Soldier is that I had no idea what the status quo was going to be at the end of that movie. I didn't even know that Hydra was involved
Yeah, me
at all,
either.
and I don't know that that viewing experience would have been as profound for me as it was if I'd walked in knowing Hydra and Shield are the same thing.
Yeah, I'm with you. And maybe I would have known that going in if I had followed it closer. I mean, it's just a matter of Captain America 2 wasn't a movie I followed the production as closely of as Captain America 3 and Avengers 2 because Captain America 2 blew my mind and I'm obviously excited for the Avengers sequel. I don't know.
But don't you think that at the time it was a lot easier to be on more media blackout if you wanted to with that movie, and we're to a place now where because that one was as big as it was and changed the game the way it did, that it isn't anymore as we kind of thought maybe it would be, that okay, you have the Avengers movies and there's where the really big stuff happens, and then in the middle it's kind of smaller pieces. Like Captain America 3 is in some ways gonna feel like the next Avengers movie because you got Iron Man there.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? And so because Robert Downey's involved and because it's part of a much larger story that's going to have the next Avengers film either end it or be in the middle of it, I don't know how you stay away from knowing stuff about that. I mean, like, and I'm saying that being closer to it where people send me stuff, I look into things, I like people expect me to talk about this stuff, so I do. But even if you weren't in that kind of situation, even if you weren't me or Dan, I think it's a little harder to stay away from it now.
No, I'm definitely with you on that. Definitely. I found out about that stuff just scrolling through my Facebook feed. Like it's kind of unavoidable. Like just if I like a page that is related to comic book news, it's like, oh, Robert Downey Jr. is in Captain America 3 and they might be doing Civil War. I'm like, oh, well, I kind of wish I didn't know that, but I
Now I
scrolled
know
on it.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Now, that's not to say that there aren't going to be surprises. That's not to say that
Oh,
I,
of course
because
not.
I mean, I'm looking at that trailer and going, I mean, there's all kinds of stuff that I'm curious about and I don't know. So, I mean, like, I'm not saying that it's deflating my excitement for it or that I feel like I've seen it already, like I did with Amazing Spider-Man 2. It's not like that. At the same time, I don't know that I'm gonna get the Winter Soldier effect, and I think that this movie has the potential to have those kind of like kind of mind bending crazy reveals like Winter Soldier did. Like I feel like Winter Soldier is the new model in a way.
Yeah.
Like that's the new age if we want to throw that word around. That's the new age we're in, right? Where you had like I think what happened was Avengers gave us and right before it gave us something sort of in a contemporary way reminiscent of the Silver Age. We got a glimpse of the Silver Age. We're hit deep in modern now.
Yeah, and I think the key to the surprises in this movie coming up might actually be Hydra as well,
Yeah.
because I think this trailer was really cool in that a lot of people are calling this like kind of like a full trailer for the movie, and I don't agree at all because like
Oh,
one
what
of
now?
one of the main villains of this movie isn't even in it. Hydra and Baron von Strucker are supposed to be intimately involved in this movie, and the post-credit scenes of Cap 2 had Baron von Strucker in it, so we know he's going to be involved to some degree. And there's a lot of clues as to where Hydra's based in here that I'll get to later that I noticed when watching the trailer. But you don't know what their role in the story is at all. You don't know how they're related to Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, what those characters' motivations are. They're still kind of complete question marks. Like there's still a lot of stuff that I don't know about at all going to this movie.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that we know from that uh, end of Winter Soldier Stinger that Strucker like had them in cages and they seem to be, you know, bad in some way. But are they brainwashed? We know Hydra. We know especially from this year with Agents of Shield that Hydra brainwashes people.
And Hydra
Maybe,
did have the Loki staff, importantly. So
yeah, maybe they're brainwashed Maybe they were raised wrong and brought up to be the way they are. But yeah, we have no idea. But we do know since, I mean, in the trailer, I think we can kind of tell that they're actually hanging out with Ultron. So does Ultron like make a deal with Strucker because their goals kind of are aligned? What exactly happens there? Who knows?
Well, one of the interesting things that I noticed in the trailer was the most of the locations they show us are distinctly not American architecture.
That's right.
And if you pause the trailer at certain points, there's signs written in Slavic languages. I think it's Russian, but I don't want to mistake it. I think it's some sort of Slavic language. The license plates look distinctly European, and on the license plates, there's a symbol before the letters and a T next to it on every one. And Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver come from a fictional Eastern European country in the Marvel Universe called Transia, which is where Mount Wundagore is. So
Oh, good
so
call.
I'm thinking that Ultron, and, well, at least Von Strucker and Hydra aren't in America anymore because all the stuff that happened in Cap 2. So the Avengers initiative has become much more of a global thing, and that's why Tony Stark needs to build the Ultron robots, is because the threat has evolved. Like, of course, the aliens invaded the entire Earth, but they were able to defeat them in New York City, in America. Like, can that team of Avengers feasibly defend the entire Earth? No, they can't. Like
Yeah.
that team of Avengers can't simultaneously be in America and Europe at the same time.
And
And
they just haven't found enough superpowered people that they trust.
exactly. And we see like a lot of protests and unrest that Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver are involved in. Like you see a brief glimpse of them in protests in their country, protesting against something, some sort of political
Is that what?
instability and unrest.
See, I didn't pick up on that. I thought we were just seeing generic, like, Middle Eastern war stuff.
No, that's it. If you look, Aaron Taylor Johnson and uh, what's her name? I forget
Yeah.
the actress's first name. The woman playing Scarlet Witch. They're in the crowd, like shaking their fists and
Oh,
protesting.
I didn't catch that. Yeah. I haven't scrutinized every frame of the trailer.
Yeah,
Just,
yeah.
just saying. I watched it. I did watch it 3 times, but I didn't do a lot of.
No, there's a lot
Um,
of quick flashes and things that I didn't notice firsthand. We'll talk one about a little bit more about one of the more important ones, I think. But
yeah.
I think it's important to realize that like we're setting a lot of this movie, I think, in Eastern Europe, which is a part of the world that has experienced a lot of instability and chaos since the collapse of the Soviet Union. Like, not that they're going to be like, whole on like political commentary with this, but I think Ultron and Hydra like being based in a country that's so unstable and dysfunctional and kind of an example of humanity doing things at its worst is important for the story, right?
Well, it must be because I think I think importantly with Ultron talking about puppets on strings and stuff, what he's got to be driving at ultimately that makes it easy for him to do whatever he wants to do is that people are easily manipulatable.
Yes, exactly.
And so he's whatever he's doing probably has something to do with convincing people to do whatever it is he wants them to do and to you know put himself up as either a ruler or an eradicator, and maybe they'll even go to a place of like he gets people to basically eradicate themselves
Yeah.
or something like that. I could kind of see that. I'm really curious as to what he ends up meaning. And I mean, it's hard to read too much into a 2 minute trailer, but we're here to speculate. So, what exactly is in the context of Avengers? Who's pulling the puppet strings? What's he talking about? When he says that you're all puppets, what are they? Because before that, I would have said government, but then we have the whole Hydra Shield thing. Is it like he's talking about Hydra and they're still there and people don't realize that they didn't really fix that, or is he talking about something a little bit more abstract?
I think he's most likely talking about humanity as a whole.
Yeah.
Like like I had mentioned before, they're too close to the problem to see that they're a part of it, in
Yeah,
his
well,
view.
absolutely. I mean, the whole and it's interesting because part of it is, you people don't realize that you've created your own destruction, and I'm your destruction, and you think you can control me, but I won't be controlled, and actually you're the ones that are easily controlled. He's basically like Terminator or the robots from the Matrix, except he has a personality.
He reminds me a lot of you've probably read it, the original Mary Shelley Frankenstein novel.
Oh, of course, yeah,
He
yeah.
reminds me a lot of that kind of stuff too.
Well, and we're talking about the same ideas that started, and a lot of the reason that Frankenstein is a classic now is because the questions presented there about the dangers of over mechanization are more prevalent and matter more now than they ever have. And
Yeah,
so that's why we constantly see people going back to Frankenstein and reworking it in some way. And yes, Ultron is definitely one of those kind of things.
yeah, definitely. I mean, even not even just in ideas, even in like characterization too. I think like if you go back and read that novel, like it's not just like a guy that is scorned like in the Universal movie, and I like that movie, but it's a very different thing where he's like, um, he can't really talk and he can't articulate what he feels about things, and he's just kind of like a hapless bystander as people are
No,
afraid of him.
the
So
monster in the book doesn't shut up.
yeah, he doesn't. He's very talkative and he's very scornful of his creator and he hates him because he gave him life and stuff like that. And I think
Yeah,
Ultron has a lot of the same sort of things going on in the comics, and I think based on what we've seen in this trailer and this movie too.
yeah. The idea is, and then the somewhat of a philosophical question is, how dare you create me if you can't ensure my happiness?
Yes.
Because
Well,
there's nothing for, if I'm the only one of my kind, because that was the whole thing with the Frankenstein monster.
mhm.
And I can see this going not in the same place. I really doubt that Ultron's going to go to Tony Stark and be like, make me a wife. But with, with the Frankenstein monster, it was, you must create for me a companion, and Dr. Frankenstein can't do it again.
Yes.
And so the whole idea is, how dare you create me and give me a life of misery? And but I don't know if Ultron will be the same thing. Obviously, I haven't seen the movie yet. But I can see it's obviously. I mean, I don't think you can do those kinds of ideas about, again, over mechanization and like technology you can't control without going back to Frankenstein,
Right, exactly.
inspired by it in some way.
And it's just very cool that if you're going to use Ultron, of course, you're going to have to inherently go back to those ideas. But I like that, Joss Whedon's the kind of guy that knows his stuff and he knows where, what these characters are all about and what sort of ideas to mine to make the best stories out of them. I think, um, you know, Joss Whedon talks a lot about how Ultron's a character that is one of his favorite villains in Marvel ever, and he kind of jumped at the
Wow.
chance to use him. And I'm very excited to see that sort of passion from this guy on the screen because he made a movie that I really liked the first time. If he's going to be able to use his one of his favorite Marvel villains ever, I have a feeling we're in for a treat.
One thing I'm wondering now that I'm thinking about it with the whole Ultron thing is, if the idea is Tony Stark used his AI to create these automated machines that could go police the world.
Hmm.
Well, first of all, I'm like, surely he didn't make them look like Ultron. Like, why would they look that sinister? I would assume that they're probably Iron Man suits, because we have the one in the trailer that's like an Iron Man suit that like messes up another Iron Man suit. So like, I would assume that they look like automated Iron Man suits, and then Ultron like is able to make himself look like Ultron.
Right.
Because why would Tony Stark design that?
Yeah,
I think that'd be really
I think
funny.
that's very much what happens. I think that beat up Iron Man suit is like the first time Ultron's artificial intelligence manifests itself, and then he turns himself into the Ultron we see at the end.
Yeah, and what you were talking about seems to be in there with like that suit has an Avengers A on it, like they're branded.
Yes,
I thought that was kind of neat. I don't know if you noticed it.
I didn't notice that, but that's very cool.
There's one flourish I caught that you didn't catch. That's exciting. But anyway, so what I'm wondering is if the logic that Tony Stark has for, we can't we don't have enough members to solve the problems of the world. We have to we don't trust anybody but us to do it. So we send out these mechanized robots and hope that we can control them. I wonder if, bear with me for a minute, if that's not ultimately the same kind of if that's not the same kind of logic that he will ultimately have later on if the Civil War thing is really happening, of like we have to control everything now.
I think it's
And
a
so it's like, so if it's a matter of like control and he wants to be the new government kind of, wouldn't it be really interesting if like the mistake he made is what leads him to do a thing with the same kind of logic he had that caused that problem in the first place?
it would be really interesting, and I think the thing with Tony Stark in this movie plays on some of the things in Iron Man 2 that I really liked. Not a movie that I didn't like on the whole, but one of the ideas that I think could have been brought to the forefront of that movie and made it really good was the fact that he tries to privatize world peace. That's exactly what he tries to do based on the trailer of this movie. He
Yeah.
he tries to privatize world peace in a realistic way. Like I never bought in that movie where he's like, "Oh, I built one Iron Man suit, so world peace happened." No, that doesn't work. Uh,
No, but
this would, yes,
if it actually worked, but then don't you ultimately have the same kind of scary notions as having one government with too much power? In fact,
exactly,
isn't it worse? Because you have one. Okay, we privatized it, but we didn't give it to the people. We gave it to one person.
exactly. So
Isn't that kind of scary? Because I've heard people. Because when I did my captain's log about the whole Civil War thing, I said it makes sense that Iron Man would be on the government side in Civil. If this Iron Man would be on the government side of Civil War, of saying we need everyone to register to be superheroes because of this mistake he made, and some people I read said things like, well, he is really anti-establishment, isn't he? Not really with the government, and I'm like, well, he would be though if he thought he was aligned with him, if he could kind of sort of control it.
well, I mean, I disagree with people entirely that think Tony Stark is anti-establishment. Tony Stark is the establishment. He's a rich billionaire industrialist. In America, you are part of the establishment if you are one of those people. Um, Captain America is the anti-establishment character here, and I think that's why it makes so much sense for them to be diametrically opposed in that fight. Captain America 2 is all about being anti-establishment. Uh,
Yeah, and it's really interesting too because like he's a patriot, he wears the colors, but importantly, he doesn't just do whatever people tell him to.
yeah,
Tony Stark doesn't either.
he doesn't. But importantly, Tony Stark, I think, if he makes a giant mistake here, as we see he does, Ultron gets out of control, it makes sense to me for him to say, well, I'm not good enough to solve this problem. Maybe the people that are trained to solve problems on the global scale, like America, the most powerful nation in the world, like the elected officials, maybe they can solve this problem better than I can, and I'll try to help them solve those problems. I think that like if the movie plays it out, I think that's I think that would work if they did it.
And then you've got the opposite side of that with Captain America saying by doing that you're taking away people's civil liberties.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. Well, let's get outside of the politics of it
Sure.
and talk about the superficial, totally shallow. Hey, that's really awesome looking. The Hulkbuster armor right off the page.
Oh, it looks so good.
They just took it off the page. It is and here's what's exciting to me. That is so preposterous looking. And it's in a movie that looks really heavy and serious and is about a lot of ideas. And Winter Soldier did such a good job of having a lot of levity, but having a lot of gravitas and making me think about stuff. And it looks like they are really going in that direction, and that's really exciting. I don't want a movie that is really pretentious and self-serious and is all about telling me how much it matters. I
Right.
want it to simply matter and also enjoy watching it and let it embrace that comic book stuff because you can do both. Winter Soldier proved you can do both. Other movies have proved you can do both. And I think that we are getting this. I'm hoping that we are continuing to get this so far away from the, well, this is just a fun, silly popcorn schlock thing, that the folks that weren't really with Avengers because they thought that it wasn't enough about something. Now I thought it was. I like we've done the commentary. We've talked about it. I thought that there was some stuff in there, but it is a setup film. And there are, it's not a perfect movie. I just feel like we might be getting maybe something closer to what some of those folks were hoping for in the first place.
I think so too, and it's going to be really interesting to see like what sorts of roles all these characters play in the movie, because obviously we talked at length earlier about Iron Man, and I think he's potentially the most fascinating character to put in, to have character stuff with, obviously because he creates Ultron. He's the Dr. Frankenstein of the movie. And Captain America too, because he's diametrically opposed to Iron Man. But I'm going to be really interested to see what they do with my two favorite characters, Thor and Hulk. We see Bruce Banner. Mark Ruffalo gets to play like sad sack, miserable Bruce Banner in this, like in this darkest place possible from the few scenes we see of him, and I'm really excited to see Ruffalo play that.
When this movie comes out on DVD and Blu-ray, Dan is going to pick it up and he's going to go back to the old Hulk TV show theme and he's going to make a music video. Mark Ruffalo walking around looking really angsty and depressed, and it's going to have a whole lot of crossfades.
Yeah, I can't wait to do that. I'm serious. That would be awesome. But in all seriousness, though, like I was just really excited because like the Avengers movie, like we had Banner at some kind of low points, and he's not sure of himself because that's just who Bruce Banner is as a person. But like especially the scene with all the Avengers on that kind of like destroyed deck of some sort of ship that they're in or something. And Bruce Banner's just sitting there on the ground with the blanket, and he looks absolutely terrified. I was like, yeah, that's Bruce Banner, man. That's awesome. Oh, it was so great. And then when he's like in the woods, and in the snow, which again kind of affirms my belief that a lot of this movie takes place in Eastern Europe because we get Russian-looking military and snow in the woods, like that screams Eastern Europe.
Yeah, that goes without saying. I mean, like I said, you got Captain America in a castle.
Yeah, yeah, of course. And the ballerina dancers. Like, there's so much Russian, Eastern European kind of stuff going on here. I wondered what those ballerina dances were about because it looked like Captain America was playing piano for them in that scene. It was kind of weird.
Oh, weird! I didn't catch that. Well, what I found interesting about that is that there is a whole episode of Angel about ballerina dancing.
Oh, interesting.
And as soon as I saw that, I went, yeah, Whedon stuff. By the way, I should mention that, and Dan, I know that you're not as familiar with Whedon stuff as I am, but this is the first time I've seen something with connected to Whedon with Marvel stuff where I went, that looks so Whedon. Everything about that looks really Whedon. And I think the Whedon fans that were kind of disappointed with Avengers because it didn't feel as much like his right now. With the humor stuff, I saw a lot of his writing, but just as far as kind of the heavier, unpredictable character stuff, I think they gave him a lot more free reign with this one.
I think so too.
That's what I'm hoping. I mean, we don't know yet. I haven't seen it, but they're certainly they're either marketing it to look like that, or they could not pick 2 minutes of footage that didn't make it look like a Whedon thing.
And I hope it is the case that he got a lot of creative freedom because, man, he's a talented guy. I watched Serenity for the first time not too long ago, and I was blown away. I thought it was a fantastic movie, and I got to start watching Firefly now.
Yeah.
And he's so good with ensemble casts, especially in that movie, that they couldn't have picked anyone else. If I was Marvel, that's the guy I would have went with too. And I'm really excited to see how he handles now that all the characters are introduced, except for obviously the new additions. Like, Hawkeye is also one of my favorite Avengers. I'm going to be very interested to see what they do with him. Black Widow revisiting Eastern Europe, former Soviet spy. What's that going to be like for her? That's going to be really interesting.
For a couple of reasons, I think it would make so much sense if Black Widow and Hawkeye had more to do and were more to the forefront than anybody thinks they ever will be in this movie. The first is exactly what you just said because of where they're going to be. But the second is because this seems to very likely be piggybacking really hard off of everything set up at the end of Winter Soldier. And they're ex-SHIELD agents. and all of the stuff that Ultron's talking about being puppets and stuff like that applies a lot to those characters.
Oh yes, of course.
And so with all of the you just like like do whatever the authority tells you to do, and you don't realize that you're part of a horrible corrupt system and all of that stuff, like even though they have become better people and stuff like that, like they were still part of a one of my favorite things about Winter Soldier was Black Widow having to cope and try to look okay with the fact that she was a pawn in Hydra's game. And you get into this, and he's saying, I have no strings, and I'm like, if Black Widow and Hawkeye aren't hugely featured in this movie, that is a giant misstep.
Oh, I agree. Yeah, and I think everyone has that kind of thing going on. I mean, everyone's kind of a slave to some sort of larger authority over them to some degree in Ultron's view, right? Like, you know, Banner is slave to the creature that he keeps inside him. He's not able to be who he is because he's got this creature he's got to hold inside all the time. Same thing, we talked a lot about the parallels when we did the Avengers commentary about him
That's
and
right.
Black Widow. And importantly, I thought it was very cool in this trailer. We see a scene of Black Widow and the Hulk again, playing with that again. I don't think I was wrong about that.
No, you definitely weren't. It wasn't something I had ever picked up on, and now I will never be able to unsee it, and I'll probably write 5 minutes about it when I finally do my rewind on it, and then I'll be like, I have to give credit to Dan Torrey because I would never have thought of any of it. No, you're absolutely right. I don't know. Maybe I would have picked up on it while I was really thinking about it harder,
No, I
but
think
you're right that stuff is there. And then like I'm thinking a lot about Thor and where he fits between, not to just completely rehash everything we said in the Avengers commentary, but like I said in that commentary that Thor is kind of a midpoint somewhere between Captain America and Iron Man, and I'm wondering if that doesn't get pulled out some more too, because of course he's part of this whole other society and is was supposed to be king, that ended up not happening, and he's part of this whole other system of control. So I'm sort of wondering how that'll fit in all this too, with his being part of Asgard, and the differences between those two kinds of schools of thought and forms of government.
it's going to be very interesting to see what they do with Thor because if we're going with the thing that they're setting up for Civil War in this movie and some of the stuff we talked about Iron Man and Captain America, Thor is the one wild card because
He could go either way.
Thor isn't in the original Civil War story. There's no set trajectory for him where he has to fall on either side. So Whedon's, if has to set that up by the end of this movie, he's going to get a lot of leeway to do things with Thor's character, and I really like the
Yeah,
idea of that.
and he's almost a wild card in general, right?
Yes,
Because
of course, yeah.
there have been, really the big character stuff that's been done with Thor so far has just been what gets him to the place to pick up the hammer in the first place. I mean, he really is. I don't want to call him a blank slate, but all the stuff that's interesting about him and comparing him to the other Avengers is inherent to his character, not so much in what's been done with him yet.
Right.
I mean, like in Dark World, the really really cool stuff in Dark World is a lot more Loki stuff. Like where Thor gets to at the end is more just, I've decided I don't want to be a king, and that's, I mean, that's about it. Like I wonder if when we get into Civil War stuff, if Thor isn't Sweden. Like I wonder if he just refuses to get involved.
He's Switzerland. He has everyone's money and he stays out of it.
I meant to say Switzerland. I'm sorry. What am I talking about? Well, yeah. I think he's Switzerland. I think he's neutral.
That would be interesting because the when you said the midpoint between Cap and Iron Man, that's an interesting point because like he had the opportunity to be a part of the Asgardian establishment and refused. So we'll have to see like what his viewpoints and all that are. It's an interesting notion. I'm really excited to see that. Actually, I never really thought about it that way.
Yeah, and I don't know if I'm right about that, but that could I don't know, that could be a cool place to take them. And also, if some of it isn't like, well, this is an internal Earth matter, it doesn't have anything to do with Asgard. Like there's not a big threat where like the whole world is at stake. This is an internal matter they have to figure out. Like I wonder if it's not going to be kind of like a Starfleet will help the Klingons not get destroyed by the Romulans, but if there's a civil war, they can't help out.
Yeah, I mean, I think Thor would have to if I think he cares too much about the people of Earth to like stay completely uninvolved if like
I
there's a
don't think he'll
civil
stand
war
involved.
and like the people of New York are threatened when they fight and stuff. Like he'd have to get involved somewhat somehow, but
But I think it'll be more like, but like who would he side with? I mean, any way, any direction he goes, he's fighting humans, and I don't think he'd be willing to do that.
right.
Because I just don't think there's an obvious right or wrong for Thor.
And you know, it's interesting that my two favorite Avengers were absent from the Civil War comic, and if they end up doing it the way with these characters, they're going to have to side somewhere. Where would Bruce Banner fall?
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean,
And
the logical thing for me might be Tony Stark because Bruce Banner is a guy that always has to be in control of his powers, otherwise terrible things will happen. And he's good
yeah.
buddies with Tony Stark. Unless they launch him into space at the end of this movie, and that's a whole different discussion.
Well, and couldn't there also be? Yeah, my instinct tells me that it's almost unlikely that Banner ends up being as much of a player in the politics, and that it's more of a Hulk thing.
Right.
I don't know who knows. Although I don't think people would love it if we kept putting him in a position where we just had the Hulk and we didn't get Banner because people like Ruffalo too much in that role. So I think that they'll have a hard time deciding if they want to ever do, say, the intelligent Hulk, because even if you had the ability to make it look good for that long, and I think they do, where you just he's hulked out all the time, and I think people would resist it because they wouldn't get to see Ruffalo do it.
I think you could still do the Planet Hulk story, just not have it be the intelligent Hulk and have him be Hulk all the time. Like there's this. This is kind of veering off a little bit, but there's this Hulk story called Hulk the End by Peter David, where Hulk is like the last like being on Earth. Like he's the only thing that survives because he survived like a nuclear holocaust and he just kind of wanders the Earth. His banner, he's really lonely all the time. So like that's like prime Hulk awesome stuff for me. It,
You
so
just like seeing Hulk look really sad.
yeah, yeah.
That's
It's the
that's the
best.
whole point of
It's the
that character.
best Hulk drama. So you could do that for a little while in a potential Planet Hulk movie. But we are talking about stuff that's not even in this movie.
Dan Torrey would watch a Hulk movie that was 1 hour and 45 minutes of Bruce Banner wandering down a highway.
With the Lonely Man theme playing in the background,
Yep.
I would be there. I would buy 12 tickets. It would be great.
I'd be like, "What's the story here?" And Dan just like makes up all this context. It's like not in the movie. He's just like, "Well, clearly Bruce Banner is upset about this and this and this, and he blames himself for this." And I'm like, "What are you getting that off road signs?" What else is in the trailer that we haven't really discussed yet? There's the like quarter of a second, frame that looks like a flashback to World War II stuff.
Yes, and that's going to be very interesting to see if that ties into the Peggy Carter show because that's supposed to be about the founding of Shield, and we know because of Winter Soldier that Hydra is intimately involved in all of that stuff. So if Baron von Strucker and Hydra play a large role in this movie, I have a feeling that we're going to be flashing back to World War II to see things that inform, Hydra things going on in this movie.
I'm going to make a radical prediction,
Sure, go ahead.
and this is a vague prediction. My radical prediction is that Ultron has more in common with the humans than he thinks he does.
Oh yeah, he always does.
He ultimately is a puppet as much or more than he says the humans are, which also, if they go there, would kind of call back a little bit to the whole Loki thing, where he like in the first Avengers movie, where he's like freedom is an illusion.
Yeah,
and then it ends up being sort of kind of in illusion that he ever had a chance at taking over and being the ruler of Earth in the first. So he has that too, kind of, right?
Yes.
With okay, so what if the reason that we have all this Hydra stuff and Strucker's there, and maybe there's flashbacks even to World War II. What if it's because there's something built into Ultron somehow where Hydra is actually, or someone connected to that actually is in control of him the whole time, or can take control of him or something.
That'd be really interesting. I mean,
I don't know, but like I just wonder if ultimately we find out that yeah, he's a pawn. He's actually a pawn too. It's just in somebody else's game.
yeah, I mean, what you kind of described in that Ultron having more in common with the humans than he thinks he does is kind of the crux of most stories where the character shows up, where he's like, he identifies all these flaws with humans, but then like, if he ends up creating a society based on the things that he thinks the same problems occur because he was created by humans, therefore
Well, and that's where
he has the same flaws.
yeah, and that's where the really fascinating kind of human existential stuff that I always really go in for gets me really jazzed if they do that kind of thing, because the idea is okay, so we create an artificial intelligence and that kind of sort of has maybe a soul or something like a soul, and what we created is actually like just like us. It's human too, and it does what it does because it's scared, and it does what it does for the same reason humans would, and ultimately that's what. So our flaws defeat it too because we created us again,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
it has the same hubris we did, that it's saying is the whole thing that is our downfall is its downfall too. I hope they go there, because that kind of thing is the whole what makes humans humans is our greatest strengths, also our greatest weaknesses. That's the stuff that really excites me about science fiction.
And I don't see how you don't go there when you do Ultron, because that's kind of what every Ultron story I've read in the comics is about. It's like that kind of big existential stuff, as well as he was created by Hank Pym, so he has similar flaws to Hank Pym even in his personal life. Like he has an obsessive kind of thing with the Wasp. He's like in love with her and stuff, and he resents. He's basically got an Oedipus complex. That's kind of what he's got going on in his personal life, I guess. Um,
Yeah, and obviously it goes without saying, but superiority complex.
yes, of course. So it'll be interesting to see like if he mirrors Tony Stark's personal flaws too, not just
Oh, I
humanity's
think
flaws at large.
that'd be fantastic. I hope he has a thing for Pepper Potts.
That would be cool.
After you said that, I'm like, wouldn't it be kind of cool if like he wants to kill everyone, but he can't kill Pepper Potts?
Do we know if Gwyneth Paltrow has been cast in this movie like she was in the first one?
I have to. I'll look it up and see if we have any confirmation.
Because I'm
I
always
don't.
welcome to see Gwyneth Paltrow in anything. She's great.
We're coming up on an hour. Dan, was there anything else from the trailer that we haven't discussed, or any other kind of predictions and things that you might have for the future? I think that we've covered the gambit pretty well.
Let's see. I mean, we talked a lot about speculation and what's actually in the trailer, so I think those are the things that came off the top of my head. Other than that, I mean, we didn't talk all that much about Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver just because we don't know all that much. But I'm really excited to see what their roles are in all of this, because those are characters that I've always said belong in the Avengers, because all of the interesting stories were told with them were told while they were Avengers and in Avengers comics. Like they showed up in X-Men and like disappeared for a while, and then they were recruited to the Avengers team, and we found out they were Magneto's kids in Avengers comics. So
Yeah, yeah.
it wasn't like in X-Men where like, oh, these are Magneto's kids. Like that was a retroactive thing added in Avengers. So I'm really glad that we have them in here, and we're going to be doing that stuff. We didn't really talk all that much about the Vision, who in comics is a creation of Ultron, and
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that they're combining Jarvis and the Vision in this, because in Ultron's first appearance, he manipulates Jarvis to get information about the Avengers and break into the Avengers mansion. So I think
Oh,
Whedon, being the kind of guy that he is, and he has a reverence for continuity and stuff, like how he did with Hawkeye in the first movie, where he was evil for a good percentage of it. I think Ultron hijacks Jarvis somehow, gets information about all the Avengers, and then that leads to the Vision being created to some degree, and he joins the team at the end.
That makes perfect sense. I forgot all about the Vision.
And I'm
And
excited to see the Vision because he's awesome.
oh, me too. I mean, that's a character I always thought was cool in the comics. I don't know a lot about him, and I've just seen him in a few things here and there. I kind of think, and I've been saying this for a lot of years now with these things coming out, that it's really interesting seeing all these characters come to screen and being in these huge movies that make bazillions of dollars. That suddenly the mainstream audiences know.
Yeah.
And of course, we talked about this with Guardians and stuff, but all of a sudden it's like, wow, like now people are gonna know who Ultron is, and like people are gonna know who Vision is, and Scarlet Witch, and I mean like there's lesser movies when you go to like some of the X-Men movies where it's like, here are characters we never thought we'd be on screen, but 5 years later, a lot of them could you go on the street and ask somebody and would they know who that is? Whereas when you look at these movies, pretty much everybody's, like I never, when I was a kid, thought that Black Widow would become a character that just everybody knows.
No, me either. I mean, I wouldn't have thought that Thor would be a character everyone would know when I was a kid. And look at him now.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. That's fascinating. Maybe the last thing I should make, because I meant to bring this up earlier. Here's the last thing I want to say, and that is that we are, and for us fans that are really loving this stuff, and comic fans, and I think that they're right now trucking in a fantastic direction. Um, like lots of envelope pushing after Winter Soldier especially. Dan, do you think that it is a bad thing or unfair to a general audience or whatever that these are becoming movies that you have to see all of them?
Um, I think to enjoy them to the highest degree you do, but I think most of the Marvel films have stood on their own well enough that you can go into them and enjoy them for what they are. Like I think Captain America 2 in particular stands on its own as a piece, and you don't need to even see the first Captain America movie to enjoy it.
I agree with that. I just wonder how long we can sustain that.
It's going to be interesting to see. I don't know that you can miss the big tentpole event movies that the Avengers movies poise themselves to be,
But I
especially
guess
with like Iron Man 3. Like I don't think you can go into Iron Man 3 without seeing the Avengers.
no, but I would suggest that we might be coming into a period here pretty soon where there are a lot more air quote tentpole films than you would expect.
Yeah, that's fair because Captain
Because
America
I think that
informed the universe a lot more than we thought it would.
yeah, and I think Captain America 3 is going to be on the scope of an Avengers movie.
Yeah.
Like Marvel's trying to poise that to make to make as much money at least on par with Superman Batman.
Yeah, and I think it probably will. I think that gamble's going to pay
I
off
think,
for them.
I think so too. Well, and I mean, Iron Man 3 did ridiculous guns and it was Iron Man 3. I mean, I like that movie, but I've only seen it the one time, and I think that it is like I don't want to call it skippable, but I think that it's one of those that if you haven't seen it, you haven't missed as much as if you didn't miss like say Winter Soldier or Avengers.
Well, we'll have to see. We'll have to see based on Avengers too, because I think Joss Whedon might do more with Tony Stark and Avengers 2 that's informed by Iron Man 3 than people might think.
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right about that. I meant to. This is another thing I meant to mention when in the trailer, he says something about this being what he started. I think it's really cool that they're doing that.
Yeah, me too.
That I mean, it's obvious from the like production side that okay, Iron Man was the first, but it's kind of cool that they're like inside the movie recognizing and acknowledging Iron Man is the first superhero, kind of like Superman is, and what does that do to this universe versus what say the DC universe would be like if Superman was the first superhero.
Right.
And then I think it's really interesting. If Tony Stark, with everything he represents, and his ego, and his narcissism and all that kind of stuff, and like how long it took him to finally learn to make the self-sacrifice and all of that. If that's what informs your universe in the first place, then what is the history of that world like versus if you started with Captain America? Now, Captain America is the first superhero in that universe, but they don't think about it like that as much
Right.
because he was. I mean, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm kind of wrong about that, but he was an army guy. Like he was part of the established order.
Right. Exactly.
And I guess with Iron Man, it's more in the modern era. I kind of piggybacked off of he was obviously somewhat inspired by some of that early stuff. And like we've talked before about the whole thing with like his dad was enamored with Captain America, and that's part of why he doesn't like Captain America and all that, which is super cool. uh, but like he's kind of, okay, I'm the superhero now, I've replaced you.
He is, yeah, and I think Captain America, like you said, is more of a military hero kind of thing. And then when he's unearthed from the ice after Iron Man had already established himself as a quote unquote superhero, Captain America came back. So, in the tradition of like, what we call a superhero in this world, I think, definitely Iron Man is the first one.
Yeah. Well, everybody, thanks very much for listening, and we're looking forward to seeing your comments. What do you think of the trailer? What do you think of some of our speculations and ideas? And in the meantime, I'm Captain Logan,
And I'm Dan.
and we'll see you again very shortly, I'm sure.